back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews. Back to talk more crime story. We're on Season 1, Episode 4. It's called St. Louis Book of Blues. Full spoilers if you have not checked out this episode because we're going deep diving again. And also, this is the first video, second video. Well, I don't know what video this is going to be. I'm in my work shirt because I have to get ready for work really early here, and I wanted to get this done. I even got tape from a box on my shirt still. So I'm trying to get this done before I go to work today, and this tape is going to bother me. So there we go. Still, this is being recorded right after the 1,000 subscriber live stream we had. I just want to tell everybody again how amazing that was. I'm going to remember this forever. It was one of the best. It's the best moment of my YouTube life right now, honestly, more important than the 1,000 subscribers, and it makes going into doing these videos like so much more meaningful. And so let's jump into this awesome episode. This is an awesome episode, okay, and it'll become clear why. First off, I found out this episode was co-written by Carlton Cuse. This is 1986, Carlton Cuse was behind Lost and like Bates Motel and a whole lot of other projects, so that was very interesting. Also, last video I kept calling Mike Torello, played by Dennis Farina, Frank. Frank is the guy that was played by Ted Levine, so there's so many characters on the show, it's hard to keep track. So let's get into it. So at the beginning of this episode, Bartoli here and Luca are talking to Manny Weisbord, giving him the rundown of how they want to work this network, this booking network that they've got going on. And they give them the lowdown. They got to find out. They want to get to Nevada, but to get to Nevada, you got Noah Gans, who lives in St. Louis, who's got a book in a safe that they need to get their hands on because it's the leverage to actually get to the sports book. And their whole plan is to take 2% of all illegal betting across the entire country, where they're not trying to win and they're not trying to lose. They're just taking enough money so that it's basically unnoticeable. So much so that it's practically not illegal. It is. Of course it is. But they're not being greedy. They're being smart. But the real problem here isn't the idea. It's getting the cooperation of other people who don't want to give it up. Because why would they? They've worked for it too. So it's basically Ray Luca's plan to how to get other people's work. So it's like stealing from criminals. So you know how this is going to go down the line. And so Manny, though, he's really, this guy Manny, and this actor here, he's great. He's been gone a long time, but he's really good here as this like mob boss, the guy above Bartoli. So you got Ray, then Bartoli, then this guy Manny Weisbord. But that's in Chicago. They got to get through Nevada. They got people in Cleveland. They got people in St. Louis. This is a whole big thing. This is just the beginning for Ray. And Ray is such a hothead, and he wants to just keep plowing through everything that he doesn't think about all the different things they got to go through to get what they want. They got to go through other criminals who are not going to just want to give this stuff up. But Manny gets really serious because Bartoli's kind of on the fence and not really that serious about it, but Weisbord kind of reminds him, like, kind of, this old man comes to life when he finally sees something he wants, and what he wants is the sports book in Nevada. So they got to try to make it happen, which leads to having to get their hands on the sports book. And then we get like this little moment, this little side moment that kind of continues last episode's storyline, where Mike goes to Novak, the coin collector whose wife was murdered, and lets them know that they need to keep the identity of the killer secret so that they can keep working on Ray Luca's case in, stealth mode without anybody knowing about it. So they're going to keep the books off, the death off the books so that Ray and them will think that he was killed by Holman. So he says that's fine and that he'll keep the secret. He's all proud to do it. And we also get this exchange between the secretary and Mike, which seems innocent enough because they talk about how did she deal with her boyfriend from last episode. But she says she does, but it feels like there's something else going on here. There's a little subtext where just a little too comfortable. They're talking a little too quietly and softly where, Mike loves his wife, but this girl, you feel like she's kind of I don't know. There's like electricity a little bit in the air between these two. So look out, Mike. Don't follow little Mike around. Think with Big Mike. Um, and then we also get a follow up on the table situation from last week with the furniture salesman that was giving Mike the runaround. And this is great because he calls him up from like a payphone and he's like, telling the guy, look, this is a table. A table's affecting my life. A table shouldn't affect anyone's life. This is a great conversation. And he's like something about, it's a table, jerk, not the Sistine Chapel. So this guy's still giving Mike the runaround, and he goes to the guys at the bar. He's wasted. They're all wasted. And he starts asking one of those questions. He's like, am I a fair guy? And they all have, there's just a long enough pause here to where you're like, oh no, they don't think he's that fair of a guy. They like him, they love him, but fair, maybe not so much about certain things. You're like, he's a hothead, and it shows already throughout the series that Mike is not really to be messed with. He takes things very seriously, and so he gets this crazy look in his eyes, and I'm telling you, man, Farina just has this look, like it's a scary look, man. He, in recent years, past this show, he's kind of played mob guys that kind of are a little goofy, a little like caricatures. They've been played brilliantly, but this is Dennis Farina's real time to shine here in this show, and I'm gonna try to make sure this thing doesn't go back on me, moving around a little bit. And so he gets to be just like so hardcore in this show. And it shows like later on when after he leaves the bar, they're all worried that he's going to do something rash. Well, yeah, he is. Because he starts getting a bunch of Molotov to throw inside the furniture store. They stop him. But they leave the bottles behind. And the next morning, the furniture guy sees there's a bunch of Molotov cocktails. He's about to call somebody, and one of the Mike's cops come inside and say, hey, look, we just, it looks like somebody almost opened you guys up early. It'd be a shame if something happened to you guys. Maybe you stiffed a customer, and next time maybe we won't show up by the time this guy throws, some Molotov cocktails through your window. Now, while that's a pretty funny scene, and showing this guy needs to do, make good on the table, all this for a fucking table, man. This is pretty bad abuse of power by the cops. Like, it really is. And you can say, oh, it was a different time or whatever, but I'm sure that this stuff still goes on. And so it really kind of paints the cops in a realistic point where you kind of go, ooh, boy. Sometimes you guys aren't much different than the crooks. And so even though you're not going to ever side with the villains, it's also like there's that line that these cops have, and I like that they show that in this. Or maybe this is played for laughs back in 1986. It's 2019. This is clear abuse of power, and even though there's kind of like that cool. Look, if you're on the other side of this, how could this ever be called cool? So I don't know. And then they finally get the table, and she says it's not the right table, and then they show the table, and it's like she goes like, oh, like acts like, oh, it's no big deal now, right? It's still, we got a table, but then you look at what was all this over. It's this fucking little tiny shitty wooden table that's just like all this for that, and I know that Mike would probably say it's the principle of the thing, but really, it's just this crappy table. But after this, we find out that the FBI is interested in Holman and how they want to be let in on the cooperation of this case because they're also trying to, get their foot in the door with the St. Louis mobsters and everything else. So the feds in Chicago are trying to work together, and it starts with getting Holman. Now now I'm convinced that Tarantino watched this show. I am freaking convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Tarantino watched Crime Story. Not because the casting of this next character, but just because of what I said last episode, and then how this character is in this person's in this episode. And we get Mr. Blonde himself, Michael Madsen, in this episode. plays a character named Johnny Fosse, who works, who is sent out to Vegas to work with Noah Gans by Bartoli and Michael Madsen is at his Michael Madsen-y best. He's younger than he was in even Reservoir Dogs, but it's clear that Tarantino saw him in this and went, there's my Mr. Blonde. Because he's full on here. This is Tarantino's Michael Madsen that we get in this. Okay, he's not any other version. You can completely see the performance that he's going to give in a few years. He's just, yeah, that quiet, soft threat. I don't think you understand. You're just a punk. Yeah. Oh, it's so fantastic. He even smokes, like he does the thing with the cigarette where he kind of puts it up like this, like Travolta does in Tarantino and like Pulp Fiction and stuff, and like Get Shorty. But this whole scene is about getting Johnny to let them take over, slash what they mean is buy the Nevada sports book. But he's trying to tell him, like, Noah Gans is not going to you can't strong-arm Gans. All right? The power is in the safe in St. Louis, where Gans's home has the book with all the names and all the odds and all that stuff for all the booking networks across America. So if you need leverage, you got to take that book. Otherwise, you got nothing. And Johnny, he throws a chair at Ray Luca. They don't like each other at all. Of course they don't. And Bartoli, played by John Polito, has to remind Johnny who sent him to Vegas in the first place. Who do you really work for, us or Gans? So the criminals, man, it's already starting to fall apart. And like I said very early on, that Ray Luca seemed like a guy who was not going to just sit back. Eventually, he's going to try to take things from other criminals, and that's what we get set up really hardcore here. And this, you'll see the table that I'm talking about in just a second. But when we get to Nevada, Gans is pretty adamant about not selling, and he's played by, oh gosh, I don't have the guy's name, but and I had it a minute ago. He's played Chief Stearns in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. If you guys know what I'm talking about, he's the big kahuna cop in the first two Ninja Turtle movies. He passed in 2003 though, but you'll see him in a minute and I'll point him out and you'll know who I'm talking about. He's that guy. I'm not gonna back down, see? He totally looks like the stereotype of that kind of character. Like the Dice Man, I think his name is Goldman, played by Andrew Dice Clay and everybody else that, and Ray. That this happens all the time. People come in there trying to buy the sports book, trying to take it over because, of course, it's like criminals are just all they see what's working and they want it. They want in, but no, Gans doesn't want to give it up. They did the work. And to be honest with you, even though it's a criminal network, if you're talking about fairness or whatever, yeah, who would? Who would want to give it up to a bunch of other people who are just a bunch of vultures trying to start to pick at it? So it's pretty interesting to watch this go down. But Johnny wants to talk more to Bartoli, but he's told, you stay put. You've already done enough talking, which already proves that Gans thinks that Johnny works for him. But his friend, Gans' friend, he's trying to tell him, look, man, I'm getting older. We all are getting older. Be smart. Don't just say no to this offer because they're never going to stop coming. This is never, ever going to stop. And Gans says, even Ray says this is where it stops. So you know that this is going to escalate quickly. Here's Michael Madsen. Look at how frickin' young he is. But Gans says that it's time to call the guys in Cleveland, which usually means that there's some bad stuff he's going to team up with some other mobsters to try to move up against Ray if they ever try to take anything from them. But so Ray finds out that Torello is Holman's cop. It's in the newspaper. He's like, you mean this guy, Holman? So he's like, well, what's the difference? A cop's a cop. But Torello's not just any cop. So Ray tells him, you need to go to St. Louis and get this book from this house. But he doesn't really tell him much else, other than, there's some cash and things like that. Really kind of just setting it, just in case, Holman gets pinched, he can't really say where he knew, who he was robbing from. He wants to get this line where he's kicking the cigarette machine. And Ray's like, why don't you pay for him like everybody else? And he goes, I paid the whore, she just doesn't like me. About a cigarette machine. It's an awful thing to say, but it's such a great line. So the cops tail Holman, but they got to get around him. So they're tailing him all the way from Chicago to St. Louis, but they got to get around him. I don't know why they got to get around him. They're trying to get to a phone to let Torello know that he needs to get to St. Louis to talk to the local sheriff where they're headed. So they don't know how to get past without him noticing them. So they take off all their shirts, they put the top down, and they start drinking beers. So that when they drive by, Holman just thinks there's a bunch of guys just cutting loose down a highway, which is actually pretty smart. But it's just kind of, it's really silly a little bit. Like, also drinking and driving. So, and we also have like the whole thing where they say we negotiate before we act. Bartoli's trying to tell Ray, like, we can't just start a war. We have to try even harder to, like, violence is not the answer. We have to try to do this the right way. Otherwise, nobody wants a war. A bunch of people die, costs a whole lot of money, that kind of thing. So Mike makes it to St. Louis, where we get introduced to this St. Louis sheriff, which he's priceless, man. He's a piece of work, man. He is this, just all he cares about is his reelection. He's this kind of guy. St. Louis isn't a small town, but he's got a small mind. And he just keeps wanting to get in the way of Mike because this is our town and this is our. He wants credit. He's just one of these kind of politician cops. You find out that he's only been a cop for like a little while, and most of the time he was an attorney before this. So somehow this attorney got elected sheriff of St. Louis, and his ideas are just, he's looking to move up into politics. And so, but he finally lets them kind of go. He even like pulls a press stunt in front of them, and he's like, that means Mike's picture's going to be in the paper, and Holman's going to know and bail. So they have to make a move. So they finally get to the job. But this asshat shows up, and they do pinch Holman at the robbery. He robs the place, he takes cash, he takes the book, and they get him outside. But eventually when they get him into the jail cell, after Mike pops him in the face, eventually what this all boils down to is the local sheriff is worked by Holman to get mobsters that are in St. Louis to let him go, and he'll give them mobsters, and this makes this local sheriff look good, because all he's thinking about is his own headlines and not the greater good of the world. And so he ends up like telling Gans about the whole thing. Gans won't press charges because what criminal would? He doesn't want anybody who's shining a light on his stuff. And this local cop thinks he's going to have Holman, but Holman bails. And Holman tells Ray that Torello's got the book because one of the local sheriff's guys actually did the right thing and handed the book. Well, it's probably not the right thing, but it's the right thing, you know what I'm saying? And because he knows his boss is a piece of shit and only cares about, himself. The right thing to do is put the book in the cop's hands so that Ray can't get his hands on it, because that's what everybody wants. The guys in Cleveland with Gans find out that Ray doesn't even have the book. And when they try to ask Goldman, played by Andrew Dice Clay, whether, where is the book, he's like, I don't even know. And you kind of believe him, except I think he was in the room when they were talking about the book, and it looks like the Gans's guys are going to kill Goldman. So all this stunk to high hell as soon as they got to St. Louis over just like jurisdiction and politics. It's amazing. This is an amazing show, man. Each episode just keeps getting better. And I did not know that this was going to happen. I am I'm more than pleasantly surprised. I'm ecstatic at how great this show is. And like I said, I'm making these hopefully so that you guys watch this show. I mean, you can see it behind me. But it's nothing like watching it all go down. This is classic TV, and nobody's talking about it. It feels like that kind of thing that Tarantino would talk about that would get people into something, like the Sonny Chiba movies and stuff that were talked about, and like he got a lot of people into those movies in the 90s. Tarantino, bring this show up in one of your press junkets or something. I don't care. Get people talking about this, because I'm just one guy. I'm just Rob from frickin' Illinois. Somebody needs to be talking about this show. So anyway, that's this review. We'll be back. It ends again on like a to be continued. It's so freaking great. Even the narrator at the beginning talks about all the previous episodes. It's fantastic. They don't make shows like this anymore. They really don't. And it's just a shame that it didn't go on for longer. So anyway, like 2 major thumbs up for this episode. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. You can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun if you want to follow me and talk to me there. And yeah, like if you feel like it, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, all that stuff. We're just getting, we're just getting bigger here a little bit at a time. And it's more about reaching people, making connections, talking about cool stuff. And so with that, I'm going to say, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you on the next video.